I remember being assigned The Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka as reading in high school. I didn't read it then, of course. I do remember the general idea. I remember some of the questions I got wrong when I was tested on whether I read it. But I especially remember the opening line. This was originally written in German, so the exact manner in which the line gets translated differs, but it starts by dropping the bomb. That Gregor, the main character, has become a giant bug. And this is what the book is known for. The book then follows the consequences of this fact. Before, he was a traveling salesman. He would wake in the early hours of the morning and sustain the family. But we quickly find that he is not able to do this, now that he is a giant bug, or vermin, as some translations render it. I think there are two main points that I want to talk about in this short review, namely the theme and then the perspective. Theme. When I went to look at some of the interpretations of the novel, it was bogged down by some odd discussion about what kind of bug Gregor transformed into. Some translations just outright say he's a cockroach. But none of this even matters. What matters is the theme, obviously. What matters is that Gregor was dependable and supportive, and then he became a bug of some kind, and now he is both useless and detrimental to his family. He is vermin. As such, he is discarded by the end. And I think this story goes beyond the mere suggestion of whether poor families can sustain those who become unsustainable. It even suggests that those who are unsustainable become potentially disgusting, and most importantly, a burden that the family is better off without. Maybe it suggests that this would be the ideal in a satirical manner, of course. It's a very bleak picture of humanity, especially in past times where poor people had less outside benefits than even today. What I found to be interesting, however, was something that I learned about Kafka going into this novel. He apparently thought his stories were hilarious. This novel does not feel funny. Maybe this story is just the exception, or maybe he's just my kind of guy. I did see one probable suggestion saying that it might be lost in translation, that it might be more obvious in German. Or maybe the absurdity of turning into a bug is just humorous all on its own. And it is, but the humor doesn't stick around. The whole idea of your work being perceived so differently just because of a language change is so interesting to me. I would have to ask a German language speaker, though. Perspective. For writing craft reasons, I think the perspective of the story also stood out to me. Overall, it is written in the third-person omniscient. The catch, if you want to call it that, is that Kafka is generally very restrained with how he jumps from one view to the next. The scenes are not scatterings of thoughts from multiple characters. Instead, much of the story's perspective has one pole at the beginning that slowly shifts over the course of the novel. It starts out in Gregor's head entirely. Slowly, there are subtle movements in perspective as the reader learns things that Gregor could not know. And once Gregor is absent, the shift is complete. This perspective shift contributes to the strange but roundabout bleakness that this novel has, where the reader sees the struggle from Gregor's perspective, but once they're in the family's perspective, they are treated to a sunny ending that could have come from a slice of life piece. Conclusion. Overall, this was an interesting novella to kinda revisit later on in life. I think I'll give it an 8.5 out of 10.
I have now released both volumes of The Paths We Have Taken, which is the first arc in the Broken Reality. This is my grim, dark, epic horror fantasy series. It takes the political intrigue of A Song of Ice and Fire, the abrasive characterization of Abercrombie, the long-term storytelling of One Piece, and the philosophical horror of the Second Apocalypse to explore the human capacity for cruelty. Check it out if you are interested.